Welcome everyone to another video, and in this video we are going to be talking about some new potential metas for Go Battle League. A little while ago, Pokemon Go app announced that they were going to be featuring the Premier Cup. It would run concurrently near the end of the season at the same time as Master League for 2 weeks, and then an additional week when all the leagues are offered. The Premier Cup, a lot of fun. I'm sure you heard about it. Is basically Master League excluding legendaries and mythicals. So no Dialga, no Melmetal, no number of different Pokemon. And you know, it's a pretty interesting cup, and I'm glad that the Pokemon Go app is exploring this direction. It's very Metagross, Dragonite, Togekiss centric. And I'm glad that they're doing it, and I'm really looking forward to doing that cup. But I think there are other simple cups that they can also include in future seasons to make every season unique in Go Battle League. So let's go ahead and start with the first one. The first one I want to do is very similar to the Premier Cup, except for in addition to excluding legendaries and mythicals, I want to exclude pseudo legendaries. And for those that are not familiar with pseudo legendaries, historically in the main series game, they are Pokemon that have a base stat of 600. So for Generation 1, that includes Dragonite. For Generation 2, that's Tyranitar. For Generation 3, they actually have two of them, Salamence and Metagross. For Generation 4, it's going to be Garchomp, and for Generation 5, it's Hydreigon. I obviously didn't pronounce that one correctly, but all the images will be up there. So once you exclude them, this is the list that you'll be looking at. You'll see that Machamp is number one. Obviously, this is on PvPoke, and this is where you build your own custom rankings. These rankings typically need to be tweaked, and there's like additional simulations that are run based off the official rankings, but this is a very good proxy for how good Pokemon will be in certain cups given certain restrictions. So Machamp is at the very top with a score of 100, which means that it's very good. It has very few counters, but you'll see near the top there are some Pokemon that do give Machamp some trouble. So the number 2 on this list includes Gallade. Gallade is a psychic and fighting Pokemon. That confusion damage will do a lot to Machamp, and as well with its psychic typing allows it to resist Machamp's counters, and as well resist Rock Slide if it chooses to carry that as its secondary move, which it may not, because there's certainly not as many flyers once you remove the legendaries, mythicals, and pseudo legendaries. You might also thinking, why isn't Togekiss on this list? I did make 2 additional exclusions, which I forgot to mention at the very beginning. Those include Togekiss and Haxorus. Togekiss and Haxorus are too good in this cup. Togekiss is definitely way too good because they're without legendaries, mythicals, and pseudo legendaries. Togekiss has only really very niche counters. Maybe the most mainstream one would be Magnezone, but it does get countered by basically everything else in the meta. And Haxorus, because there's no other dragons, and as well its only real counter is Togekiss, it became a little bit too OP. So I excluded those 2, and this is the list that we have in front of us. Swampert, Shadow Swampert, regular Swampert is also really good. It's ranked number 7. We see Shadow Gallade. We see Tangrowth. I think it would be a lot of fun to use Tangrowth in a cup, especially maxed out. Obviously, this cup won't be cheap, but hopefully Niantic can do something about the Stardust costs related to Keldor. We see Gyarados. We see Heracross. So we see a lot of fighting Pokemon. Torterra, Charizard, Magnezone, Hariyama, Executor, both Shadow variants. We see a lot of different Pokemon that become eligible. Venusaur, Shadow Venusaur, Leafeon. These Pokemon would never have a chance to compete in the Master League. But in this cup, I think there's a really good opportunity to provide a wide mix of Pokemon that can be available. So at least I think that's an interesting cup. It obviously would be very expensive if you don't already have these Pokemon, but something that Niantic can potentially explore in the future. And the second cup that I want to talk about is going to the Ultra League, and essentially it is the Premier Cup, but for the Ultra League. So that excludes legendaries such as Giratina Altered, Cresselia, Giratina Origin, and then as well removes mythicals like a Malmetal, for example. That's probably the most common one. Obviously, you can use Mew and Jirachi, but those are not as popular picks in the Ultra League. So when we take a look at this list, we see Shadow Dragonite at number 1 with a score of 100. We also see Machamp at number 2 with the Stone Edge variant, but I'm sure Rock Slide would be pretty good as well. We see Lucario, we see regular Dragonite, we see Charizard, we actually see Toxicroak really high on this list. Both variants of Venusaur, Hariyama, Togekiss, Swampert, Snorlax, Meganium. So we do see a lot of the more common picks that we already see. Maybe Machamp is not as common. Toxicroak, Hariyama aren't as common. We also see Togekiss, obviously, but we also see Pokemon like Flygon, Drifblim, Haxorus, Hitmonchan, a number of different Pokemon that could make the Ultra League a lot more interesting. And a lot of these Pokemon get really suppressed because of the presence of Cresselia, the presence of Registeel, and the presence of Giratina. So it will open up the floor for more Pokemon as opposed to what's currently available in the Ultra League. So that is the Premier Cup, but in the Ultra League meta. So when we go to, we're gonna do a one in generation for Great League, and that meta. What I've decided is it's something really simple. They really like featuring certain generations. Obviously, in the May Breakthrough, we have Kanto Week, Johto Week, Hoenn Week, Sinnoh Week, etc., etc. I decided, why don't we just go by generations? So initially, I had Generation 1, but the list was like a little bit like dragons and psychics are a little bit too strong because there's not too many fairy types, and as well there's not too many steel types, and then for psychic types there's not too many dark types. I don't think there's any dark types in Generation 1, so they become a little bit too OP, and we saw that if you're very familiar with Generation 1 competitive battling, psychic types were a little bit too OP, and that's why they introduced dark types in Generation 2. A little bit of Pokemon history for you. So when we take a look at Generation 1 and 2 combined, we see a wide range of really interesting Pokemon. So obviously Sweet Dragonair. Dragonair is number 1. Shadow Dragonair is also tied for number 1 with a score of 100. And Dragonair is not a Pokemon you would normally use in Go Battle League because you have Altaria, you have the presence of Registeel and a number of different Pokemon, but Dragonair is at the top of the list. We also see Hypno, Umbreon, Mantine, Skarmory, Shadow Zapdos. Obviously, you know how I feel about Shadow Zapdos. We have Gloom, Jumpluff, Golbat. Obviously, Azumarill is probably going to be a really big staple, but there are a lot more different Pokemon that are available in this variant of the Great League, where we restrict to Kanto and Johto only Pokemon. So I think that would be fun. Obviously, there's different generations that you can mix around, but Niantic and the Pokemon Company seem to have a really big love for the Kanto region. So, but you can't just be Kanto; it would be a little bit too stale and meta-centric. But I think this is a lot of fun, and there's some really great counterplay in the metas that you can develop in the Great League when including only Kanto and Johto Pokemon. The next cup I want to take a look at. This is kind of a niche one. I'm not sure how people would feel about this, but this is a monotype only. So that what that means is that there are a lot of dual types like Azumarill, and Azumarill, Altaria, Venusaur, a number of really meta Pokemon that have dual types. Monotypes means that you only have a single type, and I've also excluded legendaries and mythicals because obviously Registeel, Defense Deoxys are a little bit too strong for this cup. So eliminating those, actually more so Defense Deoxys, because of when it comes to monotypes, then like obviously it having counter and it's really great stat product and diverse set of moves allow it to have really great coverage. So once I excluded that, we see Pokemon like Dragonair, Hypno, Hitmonchan, Vigoroth. So when would you ever use Hitmonchan in Go Battle League? We see Clefable, Grotle, Shelgon. We see a number of different Pokemon that normally wouldn't be featured. Survivor, for example, Pinsir, a number of different, Vine Whip, Razor Leaf, Frenzy Planters that are really useful in the cup. So I think it would be a really fun cup with some familiar faces, but also some new faces if you're interested in trying out some new Pokemon in Go Battle League. The next cup is not restricted to any ranking list that I have, but this is, if you're not familiar with Go Stadium, they host a number of remote tournaments. It's a really great Discord. I will include a link to Go Stadium in the description. And basically, they've invented what they call CLIFFHANGER, which is basically a tier system for different Pokemon. They have it for pick six Pokemon for the type of tournament, but we can certainly modify this for Go Battle League, where you're restricted to picking 3 Pokemon. And so they have tier 0, which are 9 points, and includes Altaria, Azumarill, Defense Deoxys, Registeel, Skarmory, and Tropius. We have tier 1, which are 5 points, which include like Bastiodon, Bronzong, Cresselia, all the way to Venusaur and Zweilous. And then we have tier 2, which include things like Sunshine, Cherim, Clefable, Dugong, Gardevoir, Raikou, Togekiss, Zapdos, Wigglytuff, a number of like pretty good Pokemon. And we could obviously, and then every Pokemon that's not featured on one of these 3 lists are 0 points. So for example, instead of having 17 points for yours, you could have, let's say, or for picking your team of 6, actually 17 points might even still work for picking your team of 3. So for example, at 17 points, you couldn't pick the really solid core of Azumarill and Registeel. You would have to pick, for example, Registeel. You might even lower the points, like Registeel, even to 15 points, for example. So that means you would pick one of tier 0, tier 1, and tier 2, and that would add up to 15 points. Or you could pick 3 of tier 2, for example. So, or pick, 2 of tier 1 if you only prefer making the team. So for example, you might make a team of like Registeel in tier 0, Swampert in tier 1, and then you want to round out that list by picking a flyer. So Golbat, for example, is a really good flyer, helps you deal with the pesky Meganiums. Or you might go a completely tier 3 list. So for example, you might pick Sableye, Venusaur, and Umbreon as an example of a team that might be pretty solid for Go Battle League using this like kind of tier list format. I think it would make a lot of fun. Obviously, you can run it concurrent with any season. And I think that's really important, is that for those that don't want to participate in these types of cups, I think it's important to give options for the trainers to select the regular Go Battle League, or for those that are interested in doing these like kind of meta specialized ones, have a little bit of fun, have a little bit of diversity. Don't want to just run the same team and just rank up normally, but want to participate in some different cups. Because I think a lot of people like to run a lot of different Pokemon, and I think that's what makes Pokemon Go interesting, is that there's a lot of Pokemon that are really good, and I think it's healthy for the game to have a lot of different Pokemon that are useful. So those are the 5 different metas that I think Go Battle League should explore. Obviously, there are different type restrictions. You go fire, water, grass as an example. You know, steel, fairy, dragon, or whatever the combination is. That's pretty typical. Or steel, fighting, and fairy, I guess, is another triangle. There's certainly those type of restrictions that they can have, but those result in like a lot of rock, paper, scissors, very lead dependent metas. So I think, like, you know, a little bit of diversity, a pretty wide open meta, but like kind of eliminate or limit these really meta Pokemon. Again, people can still do the regular Go Battle League if they want, but I think for those that want to try something new and keep it fresh in Go Battle League, I think it'll be a lot of fun to explore these types of metas. But let me know down in the comment section below, what are some ideas of different metas that you think Go Battle League should run? And if you do include some metas, tell me what are some of the OP Pokemon and what are some of the sleeper Pokemon that would be included in your meta. And hopefully Niantic is watching. If they are, reach out to me if you have any questions. And if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see everyone in the next video.